This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news tonight. We want to welcome our viewers from around the world to this breaking news coverage. An American journalist has been beheaded by ISIS terrorists. A video showing the horrific killing and its gruesome aftermath was released on the internet a short while ago, along with a message to the United States to end its intervention in Iraq. The victim was freelance journalist James Foley, who was kidnapped in 2012 while covering the war in Syria. In the video, he is seen kneeling next to a man dressed in black. Foley reads a message, presumably scripted in detail by his captors, that his real killer is America. The video, which is obviously too gruesome for us to show you, then shows Foley's beheading. After that, it shows another American journalist also dressed in orange and kneeling, and that man is believed to be Steven Sotloff, a contributor to Time magazine who was kidnapped at the Syrian-Turkish border in 2013. The terrorist says his life is hanging in the balance depending on what President Obama does next. Let's bring in our senior international correspondent, Nick Payton-Walsh. He is in Erbil in northern Iraq. Nick?
Brianna, James Foley was kidnapped in November 2012, a comparative long time ago, when the Syrian civil war was underway near a town called Taftanaz, Binish, whilst coming out of an internet cafe. Now, it was unclear at that time who had taken him, and back then, ISIS, as it's now known, didn't really exist inside Syria, and less so in its current form in Iraq. So clearly within the 636, if you count today, days in which he was held in captivity, he changed hands within the underground that functions as sort of Syria's kidnap business. There are a lot of Americans, it seems, have been held at some point, or other foreigners, by the various different groups that make up Syria's rebels at times, some of them more criminal, some of them moderate. And as time has gone by, ISIS, it seems, has moved into that particular market and taken some of those individuals to one side. I've spoken to one American who actually escaped kidnapped by Syrian rebels, the more extreme variety, and he described how long periods were spent locked underground. He eventually managed to escape from that, and described also the torture he'd suffered. But in this circumstances, for James Foley's family, a horrific time. He was a veteran correspondent in many conflict areas, was briefly detained in 2011 in Libya by Muammar Gaddafi's forces, and as I say, then detained, and then subsequently it's not clear what exactly his path was, who held him, until we've seen this horrifying video today, the orange jumpsuit, reminding many people of the past videos people have seen emerging from Iraq during the times of the insurgency against the American presence there. And of course it would be equally troubling for the other American journalist referenced in that video to see him also in an orange jumpsuit. A deeply troubling moment, I think, for many of the journalists who've been covering this conflict for quite some time, to have known that our friends and colleagues have been held by ISIS and then released, some of them still held now. And many, I think, were worried that if US intervention began against ISIS, who in the eyes of many observers are in the likely long-term a threat to the United States' interests, that if US military campaigns against them began, that those Americans held by ISIS may meet the kind of gruesome fate that it appears we have seen James Foley meet in this.
All right, Nick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We actually have to go to the White House, where our senior White House correspondent Jim Acosta is standing by. Are we getting reaction, Jim, from the White House?
Yes, Brianna, it is brief, but the White House says at this point intelligence community officials are trying to confirm that this is indeed the killing of journalist James Foley. But let's go ahead and put a statement on screen if we have it. If not, I'll just read it in terms of what the statement reads from this White House spokesperson, Caitlin Hayden, out of the National Security Council. It says, "We have seen a video that purports to be the murder of U.S. citizen James Foley by ISIL. The intelligence community is working as quickly as possible to determine its authenticity. If genuine, we are appalled by the brutal murder of an innocent American journalist, and we express our deepest condolences to his family and friends. We will provide more information when it is available." And Brianna, in just the last couple of seconds, I pinged them back to find out whether or not it has been confirmed. They're just not at that point right now. But one thing we should point out, President Obama has just landed on Martha's Vineyard to resume his vacation there. We are not expecting to hear from the president on this at this point, but of course, all of that could change. We've seen that over the last last several days with this president on his vacation. It hasn't been much of one, and he's been forced to come out in front of the cameras and talk about things that have been developing, not just in Ferguson, but in Iraq as well.
James Foley is a journalist, and he is also an American. More importantly, Jim Acosta, thank you so much.